Hello. Hi, Stuart. For those of you that are watching on YouTube, my name is Maria Angelescu, and I'll let our lovely panelist here introduce himself.
Hi, Maria. Thanks for having me. My name's Stuart Websdale. I'm the owner of a Buyer's Choice Home Inspections in Hamilton and Holton, sort of basically covering everywhere GTA West and completing home inspections and also commercial property inspections.
Very nice. So I've been working with Stuart for a little bit of time now, and you know your stuff. You know everything that you're doing, whether it's rural property, commercial property, like you mentioned, residential. You know everything. And anytime that I need something, I know I can message you quickly and say, "Hey, what do you think of this?" So thank you for that, and thank you for taking the time to join this call with me. Basically, what we're going to be doing is just educating some people about general home inspections. Right? There's a lot of first-time home buyers out there that don't really know what it is. There's a lot of people who haven't bought a property in 20 years. And so home inspections aren't very familiar to them because it's kind of, a little bit of a newer thing that we've been doing, at least for the last little bit. So I'm going to get into a couple of things with you, and we'll just see where this conversation takes us. And we're going to educate the masses about home inspections, why you should do them, what to look out for. And I'm very excited to get right in. So let's get right into it. So talk about, first and foremost, what is a home inspection for those that aren't familiar with the term?
So home inspection is a non-intrinsical inspection of the property. Basically, we check the roof, the exterior foundation and structure, check the grading, walkways, patios, decks, driveways, garages, everything on the outside that could impact the interior foundation and structure. Then we check the interior foundation and structure, starting in the basement. Check the furnace, AC, water heater, laundry appliances, kitchen appliances, plumbing, and drainage. We check throughout the basement for mold, asbestos, any moisture. We use thermal imaging cameras, moisture detection meters, and we progress up into the main living areas, checking rooms, doors, windows, floors, ceilings. And then all the way up into the attic, then we check the interior roof structure for any damages, any moisture, any mold, and checking that the insulation is up to current requirements or if there's any moisture or damage to the insulation.
And so this sounds like a lot of things that you're looking in just one home inspection. So typically, how long do these appointments take you generally?
On average, it's around 2 to 2.5 hours. It really depends on size of property, finished basements, what the people have got stored in the house, and then obviously, then if you add into it septic systems, wells, crawl spaces, it all becomes a little bit longer. But on average, we're about 2 to 2.5 hours. And if you add the rural properties in, we're looking at about 3 to 3.5 hours.
Got you. So you do a very, very thorough inspection of all the systems that at least you have access to. So what would you say to people who they want to know what's happening behind the walls? What would you say the limitations are when it comes to home inspections?
Limitations really behind walls. We've got the thermal cameras, so we can see behind the wall for any cold spots, any moisture. But the one things we can't see is when it's dry, if there are any defects behind there, and also if there are any sort of dry spots of mold. That's the sort of the main limitations for sort of foundations and walls and structures that do have drywall or finished surfaces on them.
Right. So what would you say are common misconceptions? Because I have a lot of people that I talk to and they say, oh, well, the home inspector is going to find absolutely everything for me. Or on the flip side, home inspector is only looking at the surface thing. So what do I need it for? So what would you say is a common misconception that you come across when talking to people about a home inspection?
I think the like what you said is the home inspector will find everything. It is really a snapshot inspection of what's actually taken place on the day. So if during the summer periods, if we're in a dry period, then finding moisture and concerns that aren't showing on the drywall interior, that is the biggest challenge because there's no moisture coming in from outside. There's nothing that you can see behind it. So that becomes the biggest sort of challenge, and also a misconception that we can see everything. Other sort of like areas are exterior foundation problems buried beneath the ground and the soil level. That's a big challenge for us as well, because realistically we can't see anything that's not showing at the time,
Right.
and we can't find faults that aren't there at the time.
Right.
So, but again, we use thermal imaging, we use moisture meter detection. So, if there is something there, or there is something that gives us an alarm, we can forewarn. So, like if I'm in a dry period and I'm not getting wet readings, but I'm getting readings that are higher than I would expect in the drywall, I would advise the client that there may be something there, but I can't fully identify it.
Right. And that kind of segues very well actually to my next question. So, what I've noticed and what other real estate agents and clients in general have noticed is there's kind of two types of home inspectors. And I think this follows with lawyers and mortgage brokers and real estate agents as well. But what I would say I notice is that there are the ones who, okay, they find an issue. Let's say there's water damage or mold or whatever it ends up being, and immediately they'll tell the client or the real estate agent to potentially back out of the deal because the problem might be too big. But then you find the ones that, okay, they see the issue and they try and talk the client and bring them back down to earth and talk them through what their solutions are. If there is a solution, how much it's going to cost. So basically, I'd like to say that we have the deal killers and the problem solvers. And there's situations where sometimes we need both, right? So how would you approach, or how have you approached typically what you would call a big issue with the client? And do you tend to throw that phrase around a lot, like, oh, you should back out? Or what's kind of your overall approach when you come across these things?
For me, like what you said, it is about an education side of things. So, like, we're at a property, the client loves the property, it's obviously the right one for them. So you have to give them the information they need to make an informed decision. So, like, I've I believe there's probably only been maybe one inspection where I have had to say it scares me, and that was only just in a discussion, because the foundation was concerned and the amount of moisture was coming through. There was lateral heaving and pushing into the foundation, and even then, it is something that it's just a case of, okay, this is a worry. It can be repaired, but it also comes down to the financial cost. So it's always that sort of like case of weigh up the client loves the property, so you don't want to scare them off, you don't want them to run, you don't want to panic them. You want to give them the information, you want to give them solutions and costs, and then guide them beyond that. At the end of the day, between myself and yourself, we have a good understanding of what the property and the client can do. It always comes down to the dollars that they have at the back end once that deal goes through. I've had clients that have had horizontal cracking through all four walls in the basement with lateral heaving. The inspection showed moisture was coming through. The realtor at the time was, they're going to walk, they're going to step away from this. And I brought the clients down. First question: do you love the home? Yes. Do you love the area? Yes. Is it right for your family? Yes. Does 15,000 of investment worry you about buying this property to bring it up to a perfect standard? No. They went ahead and bought the property. It cost them 12,000 to reinforce the foundation, and perfectly happy. Agent was happy because they thought they were running. So it all comes down to comfort, education, and then the personal side of whether they have that investment to put into the property.
Absolutely. And I think that's kind of the best approach there is to take, excuse me, because at the end of the day, it's not you and I's money that we're spending, it's their money that they're spending. And so, as you said, if it hits all of their boxes, but they have to dig up a little bit more cash than they were expecting to make that perfect house even better for them, At that point, it definitely could be worth it. I mean, I've had people that have walked away from something that costs $5,000 to repair. But then you have other people who are okay to shell out that 15, 20 grand. So it always just comes down to what they're comfortable with, their personal preference, and education. I always say, and I think you go by this as well, is that education is power, knowledge is power. And so we don't want to panic people. We don't want to put them into a frenzy when typically most times, 9 out of 10 times, there is a solution, but that solution typically comes at a cost. And so it's always weighing the pros and the cons. And I always tell people, listen, get a piece of paper out, get a notebook, and make a physical list of what is great in this house, what is not, and then figure out if it's something that you want to go forward with. Because unless you really see that physically on paper to say, okay, this house is in a great neighborhood, there's great schools around, I have to pay 10 grand to get whatever item fixed based on the home inspection. And I find that when people actually make that list and put it on paper, that really puts things into perspective, because when you're having that conversation in the moment, it is very scary. Like, you're talking about 10 grand. Where is it going to come from? What are we going to do? But when they actually have a night to sit about it and really write everything down on paper, you find that the next day or the next couple of days, they've kind of come down a little bit, and you're a crucial part of that process. Because as I said, there's other home inspectors that one of the first things that they go towards is, you should back out of this, right? And that's something that we don't always like to see, not because we're trying to make our money here and say, no, you need to close, but also maybe what they're saying back out of could have been a $2,000 to $5,000 fix, which if you're buying $1 million property in the grand scheme of things, that's fairly affordable, right?
Yeah, and that is the best way. It really is. It's I see a lot of clients sort of like get up onto that ledge and ready to sort of like jump and run, and it is sort of like just cold light of day. Wait for the report, read it. Anything in the report that scares you, before you make a decision, call me. Let's talk through what you read it as, what you see it as, what I see it could be, what the options, what the opportunities are there to sort of rectify it, and then make that decision. And that's that sort of thing that we all have to just step away. And for me to say walk away from it, I don't know what position the people in. I don't know what their threshold for risk is. I have to do them the best service to give them the information they need to then sleep on it, talk about it again, and then make that decision.
Absolutely. And so talking more about the report, because I've seen the reports, they're long and they highlight absolutely every single thing. And so what I've found in the past is clients will look at it and say, oh my gosh, look at this. Like, the inspection when we were there in person, everything sounded okay. But now that I have the report, everything's highlighted in red. So at least from what I've noticed, you guys have a requirement to highlight absolutely every small finding. So can you speak to that a little bit more? When you do see this huge list of things highlighted in red, are they really huge items, or is it you just have to highlight everything that you find?
We have different ways of highlighting them. So yes, there is a 60 to 70 page report. Yes, there are somewhere between 150 to 200 pictures in that report detailing the good, the bad, the issues, worries, concerns. Everything that we highlight in red is normally at the summary page at the very front. And those are sort of like safety items, structural items, sort of big issue items that are needed to advise the client. So, like, yes, in red, a 15-year-old furnace could be there because it's in poor condition. It's still operating, but we have to advise that the lifespan is coming to the end of its life, and that may be an investment they need. But there also may be in red a horizontal crack with lateral heaving, which is pouring water through, that we also need to inform them of, that there is a potential structural concern.
Right.
So they are the big ticket items. And then once we get beyond that, the red items do sit in the relevant pages within the report. But then we have bluer items, which are guidance, minor issues, so like little settlement cracks in even in the exterior foundation. So a vertical settlement crack in the foundation is something that needs to be sealed. Isn't a major concern. It's something just to worry about moisture coming through. So that sits in the blue area of the report and is a guidance to effect a repair, but also little cracks within the walls within each of the rooms. They're just something that's sit in as a item that needs to be sealed and ensure that there's no further concerns, no further sort of expansion of that crack. So it can be daunting, it can be overwhelming, and that's why I always say read through it, then give me a call. And
Right.
sometimes we'll have 5-10 minute calls with the clients. Sometimes we'll have an hour going through every little blue area, which isn't something to worry about, but to them, that is a concern.
Right. And so what would you say then to people who say, oh no, I'm not going to get a home inspection done? And we saw this over the pandemic. Like it was insane. And I was scared for clients because we're like, we haven't even done an inspection. And obviously, sometimes we had that opportunity to do kind of a pre-offer inspection, but it was only an hour, right? And so we're not being able to check every single system thoroughly. So what would you say to people who, oh, it's not worth spending the money?
Um, Obviously, the recommendation is always to get the inspection. Normally, on most standard inspections, there are going to be items that either you as the agent have to go back to the selling agent and the sellers to discuss, and also may need investment from the client. There's not really any home inspection that goes on that is fully 100% clear.
Mhm.
That being said, probably a high 90% of all inspections, I would say, we find moisture concerns. So either a vertical crack in the foundation or a moisture stain or moisture actually in the basement on that side of things. We do find issues with the furnace, the AC. And again, the other big ticket item that a lot of people cannot see, and it does look great from the driveway, is the roof surface.
Mm.
And there are areas that realistically you can't see, you can't find out, and can be very expensive to just to start off. So, like a typical shingle repair, you're looking at $500 to $1,000 just to get that initially repaired. So you're better off going with the inspection. If you're spending $1 million, $2 million and an inspection is costing you $400 on the grand scheme of things, I will normally find items for repair within the property that far exceed what the inspection cost would be. Like what
Absolutely.
you said, going through the pandemic, we were doing the 1 hour inspections, but I was also doing a lot of post inspections for people that bought the property, were worried about it when they were buying it and had no choice. And on average, I was looking at probably in excess of $40,000 of repairs
Wow.
on those properties. And that was sort of foundation, structural, electrical, plumbing, all of those aspects, furnace, ACs. You had the problems sort of like mount up, and that was why people were doing it, because they were worried themselves. They had no choice. And then when you're going through the house on a post inspection and you're telling them that their full investment that they've possibly stretched to get has 20, 30,000 to be invested to get it to a satisfactory, safe condition,
Right.
that was horrible. Um,
Yes.
so I would always say, for $400, to have peace of mind that you know that somebody's gone through the house and checked it in the best possible way that can be done. We're all insured. We're all, so if we make a mistake, we have insurance to support us on that. So, and that the majority of home inspectors have that. So, like, it's a hard enough business to go through and do as it is. So, we have that protection with insurances. So, for $400 on a $1 million investment, is that too much to ask?
Right. And I completely agree with that. And to touch on that, you had done a home inspection for one of my buyers, and originally he was like, should we do it? Should we not do it? It was, I believe, right after the pandemic, and it was still like some people were still doing home inspections, some people were not. And I said, no, we have the opportunity now. This property's been on the market. We're going to do a home inspection. We did it. You went. It was great. Roof shingles are missing, right? And so there was water damage that was happening in one of the rooms because some of the roof shingles were missing. And so he spent whatever it was, the $400 or $500 on the home inspection, but then ended up saving thousands of dollars because then we then amended the agreement to have the seller replace these missing roof shingles to stop the water damage from happening. So if we hadn't done that home inspection, we have no idea. Like, it's a 3-story home. We couldn't see what was happening way up on the roof. And so in the grand scheme of things, he saved thousands and got the seller to fix those items rather than having to find that out later down the line. There would be greater water damage happening in the property because we didn't know what was happening up there. So I think that was a very, very good $400 to $500, very well spent. I recommend it to absolutely everyone, especially when we're looking at older properties. But mind you, there are newer properties and new construction homes as well that I would actually prefer to go with an older home than a newer home. And that was something that I really wanted to ask you, because I know we've kind of had this conversation in the past, is how do you feel about new construction homes versus older homes, and which would you prefer for yourself?
Uh, it's a very difficult one to answer. So, like, just from the inspection point of view, people do buy brand new homes. Um, I do go through a lot of them within the first month, and I do manage to find a lot of issues that they
Right.
then go back to either Terion or the builder to get repaired. From a personal point of view, I prefer the newer type property, but I do believe that the older stone foundation, brick built properties have a lot more character to them and will probably outlast a lot of the new built homes that are 10, 15 years old and newer.
Right. And if you're willing to touch on it, what are kind of the big items or differences that you see with newer construction homes versus older properties in terms of the structure or the material used, where you find those big problems?
For me, it's really just sort of like areas where they sort of like rush the builds.
Hmm.
So like you're buying or you're going through a property which is a couple of months old. You got cracks in the foundation. You've got moisture still within the foundation. You've got sort of like defects in electrics on those side of things. I've gone through new homes that the furnaces were all inadequately sized for the property, and the builder had to replace the furnace. So there's lots of areas that they can fall down on. The biggest sort of like issues you find with new properties is in and around the foundations, the grading, the way they moisture proof them. They don't overly take care when they're backfilling the grading, so the moisture membrane on the outsides tend to get damaged. So that tends to be the biggest sort of problems with the newer homes. The older homes, they have lots of character, and I like you've got sloping floors, you've got sloping doorways, you've just got the sort of like the wooden windows, but structurally, I I would say 100-year-old home will probably be still standing as long as some of these new homes we've got now,
Right.
because the foundation is a lot more substantial. You do have to look after it. Don't get me wrong. a new home is easier to look after because it's very visual, very standard. Older homes with stone foundations, you do have to look after them. You do have to protect the outside for moisture damage. You do have to maintain it regularly, but they look a lot nicer.
Right. It's personal preference, right? And
Yeah.
then, as you said, structurally, there just are some differences there. And so, what you were saying with the new construction, you're seeing these problems because they're going up too quickly. So it's not, they're just not taking care as they're doing things very fast.
Yeah, and that is the thing. So like I've gone out and they've done a PDI with the clients to take over the property. I've gone in there 2 weeks afterward and then moved in and found there's a whole patch of roof shingles missing and
Wow.
just bare plywood roof showing. And that is pure rushing. They miss out the eaves troughs. They miss out the downspouts. So, like, I've gone through new homes where the eaves troughs are not there. The people have moved in. The downspouts aren't there. So the water's just pouring straight off the roof
Wow.
against the foundation. So there is there are lots of things that you do still need to pick up. Yes, they are up against timescales. You can't blame the guys out there that are doing the work. They're doing their best, but they are hurried. They are sat over the winter, absorbing moisture, snow, everything on that side of it.
Mhm.
So it is a risk. It is, but there are lots of good new build homes. So
Right.
like I go through a lot of custom build homes that are immaculately built, minimal issues, 10 years down the line, still looking very good. It just it just really depends on the builder, the timing, when it was built, how long it was allowed to dry for, all of those aspects for a new build home.
Absolutely. And those are good questions to ask as well when people are getting into pre-construction, speaking with and seeing, okay, is the developer and the builder reputable? Do they have a good track record? And asking those questions specifically. So that's actually a very good tidbit of information that we can share with clients out there. Now, I do want to kind of pivot a little bit. Is water damage really as bad as it sounds, or do you find that it can be an easy fix?
Um, it really depends on the extent of the water damage. So,
Right.
like, you can go in with a moisture meter, find moisture behind a drywall. Um, is it going to be a major amount of issue? Probably not. It really just depends on what you actually do about it. The cracks in the foundation, the vertical cracks, you're looking at sort of $200 to $300 to have them thermally injected with a 20-25 year guarantee, and that will cure your problem. Yes, you may have to redo the drywall and everything, but the issue with moisture is gone. Um, Horizontal cracks, they're a big problem if you've got moisture in because there's a weakening, there's lateral pressure from the moisture on the exterior of the foundation that's pressing on the interior walls, and that is a structural situation where you have to go through.
Mhm.
Um, would do I advise people to walk away because there's minor moisture readings? No. Do I give them guidance to effect a repair, how it can be done, guidance on costs? Yes. Good prepper or good maintenance with basement areas is to have a dehumidifier running during the heavy moist season. So when there's excess heat and it's sweating down there, run a dehumidifier. When it's wet, run a dehumidifier. It's going to help draw out any of the moisture within the structure.
Right.
And that's the best way until you can physically see what's causing the problem, where it's coming from, and what you need to do about it. And again, if it's that bad and it's extensive all the way around the foundation on one side of the wall, or even all the way around, then you can look at waterproofing inside, or you can do exterior waterproof and digging down. It just depends on access to the foundation on the outside, because that's the better way of doing it. And if you can't, like some of the period type homes where you've only got the 4 foot walkway between the two houses, you can't dig down there. So then you do the interior foundation moisture prevention.
Right. And so what it sounds like just going through all of this is at the end of the day, it really comes down to how you're maintaining your home. They are constantly servicing certain systems. So in your home or just in people's homes in general, what are kind of the main servicing items that you recommend that people do every season? And I know that you touched on dehumidifier during wet periods. So what are some other items that people can do each season that will just help them maintain their home and the systems better?
So the best way to start is your foundation. Check your grading. Make sure that it slopes away from the foundation so you're moving any moisture away. Make sure you seal any cracks in the parging, the foundation on the outside of it. Make sure you seal any cracks in the brickwork siding. Make sure that any of the aluminum siding or vinyl siding is all sealed at the ends where they join, just to make sure nothing gets in that side of it. Protection of the windows, again, caulking around the exterior of the window, make sure moisture's not getting into any of the frames. If there's any wood windows, then you want to make sure you do a good thorough check during the summer period to make sure the paint's not deteriorating, make sure there's no sort of rot started, and those side of things. Check your roof as best as you can, because again, it's something that doesn't get seen, but the amount of times I go through and people go, oh yeah, I noticed some shingles in my back garden, I didn't realize it was coming off our roof.
Hmm.
Probably a good idea to get it checked, but those sort of things, annual maintenance of your driveway, make sure that those cracks in the driveway are sealed before the winter starts, because again, the moisture gets in there, it freezes, it expands, it starts to blow. You could probably get extra years out of it by spending a couple $100 just to seal your asphalt driveway instead of having to rip it up and replace it.
Absolutely. Go ahead,
and
sorry.
and then once you've looked after your outside, the other areas are your furnace and AC. um, Recommendations are always an annual inspection on them. Newer ones, you probably don't need to fully go every year, but it's still recommended to keep it in good condition, operating well. And the appliances that I see that are 15 years plus are always clean, always have a record of service and a maintenance on them, and it shows that you get the longevity from it by just spending a couple $100 each year just to get them serviced, cleaned, and maintained. And I'll go through appliances that are 3, 4 years old, furnaces with rust in them because the condensate's been leaking, no one's picked up on it, and it started to rust the enclosure. So you then have to start looking at what's causing it, what damage is done, and lifespan then starts to deteriorate on those appliances.
Right.
So they're the sort of like the main key areas, just to make sure that you moisture prevent your property.
So basically, long story short, is maintain. Service your systems, your furnace, your AC, check the foundation, check the driveway, check the windows. Anywhere we see holes, seal them up. So those are all fantastic tips, and hopefully more and more homeowners start to follow those items, because at the end of the day, like you said, you spend a couple $100, but you're increasing the lifetime and the longevity of these systems by years, and you're saving so much money in the long run in the event that you weren't to do these things, right? And the very last question that I have for you is, what piece of technology would you recommend that people have in their home, at least maybe in the GTA or Burlington Hamilton area, to kind of mitigate risk? Like, what's kind of the number one piece of technology that comes in mind for you when I ask this question?
Technology wise, then you would probably want to be putting a moisture detector in the basement. So like in general, so like every home should have carbon monoxide detectors in the house. The amount of properties I go through that don't have them,
They
the
don't
batteries are taken
have.
out of them.
Yeah,
It is scary. So I don't know whether you class it as technology. It definitely is
absolutely. I'm
something.
putting it on there. Yeah,
That is always my number one. Make sure you have carbon monoxide detectors on every floor where there's a fuel burning appliance, and also every outside of every bedroom. Do not put them on the ceiling, put them in the receptacle, because carbon monoxide will rise and you want to catch it as early as possible.
that's a
So
good.
I always, yes, put it on the ceiling in the basement, but then you can't have too many carbon monoxide detectors. So like most new builds now have them on every single floor and have them inside every single bedroom and on the landing. Um, I still would say you still want them in the receptacles at the lowest level, just just as a prevention. So that's the main part of technology that you would want to sort of like have. Other things now that are coming out are the energy efficient heat pumps,
Mhm.
where you don't have the furnace. You still have your traditional air conditioning unit, and you still have your traditional water heater, but the water heater controls the heating for the property, and the air conditioning controls the cooling. And then it goes through a heat pump, which is effectively a burnerless furnace. They look very similar, just a little bit smaller. They still have the fan, still have the same type of insulation, but it's just got no gas going to the furnace.
Right. I
Uh,
haven't come across those too often. What is, do you happen to know the cost difference between a furnace and a heat pump?
they're very similar now. So, like, you get a lot of grants as well, because Ontario Energy Efficiency is looking to get the heat pumps installed,
Right.
and a lot of condo townhouses have heat pumps. A lot of condominium apartments will 90% will be a heat pump in there, and then a lot of the new build um, townhomes, which are freehold, are actually going to the heat pumps, and even some of the large, so like 3, 4 bedroom detached properties are starting to push that way. It really depends on the builder that's putting them in.
Right.
But they're a little bit more expensive, but pretty much on par with what you would pay for a furnace and AC really nowadays.
Right. Well, that's good that people have the option for that. And yeah, I guess like you said, it's kind of a new wave of an alternative form of heating that we're seeing coming through and sweeping through the new build. So that's definitely something to look into. So Stuart, that was phenomenal. Thank you so much for your time. I'm going to put all of your information for those that are watching on YouTube. I'm going to put all of your information in the caption. So if anyone wants to reach out to Stuart, you have any questions, you want to buy a property, you need a great home inspector, Stuart is your guy. And any questions that come up for anyone whatsoever, please put them in the comments or send me a message directly. Stuart, again, thank you so much. And I appreciate you taking the time to be able to do this today and just educate the masses on home inspections, maintaining your property, increasing the longevity of your systems, and just making sure you're getting the home that's right for you.
Yep, thank you. It's been great.
Awesome. Okay, have a great day.
And you.